This is my Ibanez GA350TCE, and my initial plan for this video was to do a full review of this instrument, but obviously plans have changed. I recently moved from an area that was very humid to an area that was very dry, and within 2 weeks of living here, I woke up to find my guitar looking like this. Obviously wood flexes with varying humidity, and I believe that's probably what ended up causing this string damage here. So what I'm going to do in this video is go ahead and give it a full conditioning, polish the frets, fix the strings, put a new set of strings on it, and then in a follow-up video, I'll do a full review of this instrument. So with that said, I'm gonna dive into getting this thing cleaned up and restrung and give you guys an idea of the process that I go through to polish frets, condition the fretboard, and set up the guitar. Let's dive in. So with the strings off of the fretboard, what we're going to be doing now is taping off the fretboard, leaving only the fret wire exposed so that we can polish it. I'll be using a 3M painter's tape to tape the fretboard, something very simple that you can find at any hardware store, and the Dunlop System 65 microfine polishing cloth. This is kind of my go-to for this sort of thing. It's very simple and it really kind of minimizes the risk of damaging the fretboard. I'll be sure to leave affiliate links in the description to everything that I'm using in this video. Just keep in mind I may earn a small commission from it. Really what you're just looking to do here is get along the fret wire and cover the wood of the fretboard. Very easy to do, no reason that you should have any trouble. You know, you can get fret guards to do this, but if I'm being perfectly honest with you, those just have always, I don't know, they've kind of bothered me. I've just not been a fan of them. I know they work well for some people, but for me, it's kind of cathartic to just kind of go through and be meticulous and make sure that, you know, we're not damaging our fretboard here. All right, so with the fretboard taped, a couple of quick things here. Number one, you don't need to wrap this around. It only makes it more difficult to get off. And number two, I'm going to adjust the camera here really quick. You're going to want to tape off along here too. This is something I recommend just to be on the safe side. I mean, I've done this enough times that I don't really worry about it. But for those who have never done this before, you don't want that sandpaper to slip off and catch the guitar and possibly scratch it. So we are going to start by simply taking this polishing cloth and rubbing it over the fret. And right away, you'll start to see the oxidation coming off. You can see that the oxidation here is absolutely coming off, and the fret is quite nice and shiny. See here, that is quite a nice polish on those frets. We're going to take it a step further. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I like to use Freon or Fron. Kind of takes it one step further to really make these things come out. So that's going to be my next move, and we'll go from there. All right, so the next step is going to be to apply some of this polish here. It's called Frine to the fret wire. It basically removes any of the excess oxidation. It was loosened up by this polishing pad. You don't have to do this. The polishing pad typically does the job well enough, but this really kind of takes it to the next level and makes it so that, you know, folks in the 8th row can see their own reflection in your fret wire. Now, I've already done the first 3 frets here, and it's probably hard to tell because the camera just isn't that close. But essentially what you're going to do is just squeeze out a little bit on here, and we're going to start on the 4th fret because my camera unfortunately wasn't on when I did the first 3 frets. All right, and just kind of work this over a little bit. And you can see pretty quickly that it's going to remove whatever the polishing cloth didn't. You can see that stuff is still coming off. So this stuff really makes the frets glow, and I highly recommend it. So I'm going to keep moving here. What we're going to do now is go ahead and get this tape off, and we are good to go from here. You can see those frets really are just, they're like mirrors. And that's what I'm looking for, you know. It does help a little bit with playability, but it really helps too with the aesthetics of the guitar. And if you're just kind of obsessive compulsive about cleanliness the way that I am, you'll find that this stuff works really well. So typically the next thing I'm going to use here is the Dunlop 01 fretboard cleaner. All that's going to do is just clean this up and get it ready for conditioning. Ideally, you want to use a clean rag. I mean, yes, I just did the frets with this, so I kind of know where I worked. But you want to spray this on a rag, not on the fretboard. And of course, if you're unsure if you can use this on the type of wood that your fretboard is, always, always, always reach out to the manufacturer. Say, hey, I want to use some Dunlop cleaner 01 and 02 on the fingerboard. Is this an acceptable option? And they will typically get back to you. I've reached out 3 different times for 3 different surfaces, and actually in all 3 instances, they got back to me within 3 days. All right, looking like we are good to go. And now for the final step, which is a fingerboard oil, a deep conditioning. And this is one of those things you want to be somewhat careful with, in the sense that you don't use it on a maple fretboard, okay? A couple of things to note with this: use only on unfinished fretboards. So if you have a gloss over your fretboard, that's going to be a finished fretboard. Again, if you're unsure as to whether or not your fretboard is finished or it isn't, reach out to the manufacturer and they will give you an idea. You want to shake this bad boy up. If you're using it for the first time, what you're going to have to do is take your finger and break this dabber here. I don't have to do that because this is a bottle that I've used before. And how you want to do this is just kind of go over this here evenly. Okay, and you don't need to pile it on, just enough so that the fingerboard is kind of glossy. And that's it. There's no need to, you don't want to really push down too hard. You don't need to do that. It just kind of comes out. And this is really one of the simplest ways to condition a fretboard. What you don't want to do is squeeze the bottle. That's really unnecessary, and it's going to put too much oil out on to the fretboard. Grabbing my other camera here to get more of a close-up look. What you can see is it's not flooded on the board, and I'm trying to get you guys a good look at this, that it's not pooled up. It's just enough to give the fretboard a little bit of a wet appearance. What I like to do is let it sit for a little bit, and then, and by a little bit, just a few minutes, let it sit, let that oil kind of soak in, and then what I'm going to do from there is simply wipe away the rest of it. Last but not least, we're going to hit it with a formula polish and cleaner, and this is of course for the body. And I'll go ahead and swing this around to give you an idea. So we want to do is take a couple of sprays, but I'm going to do it off camera because you don't want that stuff ending up on an area where it's not supposed to be. And that is exactly why they want you spraying it onto the cloth and not on to the guitar body, okay? So it really does make sense when you think of it from that perspective, all right? So remember, spraying onto the cloth, not onto the body. And of course, what you're not going to see on camera is I am going to do the sides and the back, but it's just kind of difficult given my space constraint. Mirror finish, this thing is absolutely beautiful. I cannot recommend this stuff enough. Dunlop is really just kind of ahead of the game in my opinion. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and get this thing strung up, do a quick demo for you guys so you can actually hear it, get an idea of what it sounds like, and from there, I'll give you my final thoughts. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how I polish frets and clean up fretboards. It's a pretty simple process to do. The only things you really want to keep in mind are the materials of the fretboard. You don't want to use that stuff on anything finished or a maple. You know, as I mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to reach out to the manufacturer or the place that you bought the guitar from, and they'll be able to guide you on what chemicals are and aren't acceptable to clean it with. Also, too, when it comes to using the fretboard oil, you don't want to put too much on. A little bit goes a long way, just enough to coat. You don't really want to oversaturate the fretboard. That's a common mistake that I see a lot of folks making. Just enough to cover it. You don't really want to go excessive. So if you want to know more about this guitar, be sure to sub the channel, as I'm going to have a full-length, in-depth review coming soon telling you everything I like about the guitar and a couple of things that I don't. If you have any questions, by all means, leave them in the comments, as I do try to answer all the comments that come through on the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.